Not being happy with where my life is going, I decided to change it, and I took it and put it in my own hands. I had work clothes on, and I went to work and built some cars that no one's ever seen before.
The grinder has gone silent in Canning, Nova Scotia. For years, we watched the sparks fly between these two, Chad Hiltz and Jolene MacIntyre. Not just the sparks from welding torches and angle grinders, but the kind that comes from two people building something extraordinary together. She wasn't just another employee at Bad Chad Customs. She was the backbone, the anchor, the invisible force that held the entire operation together.
Never been this many cars here before 9 o'clock. I'm having a big feeling that it's going to be a full house today. I like this little hot rod, eh? Tony Gadet? Yeah, cool. Looks good, man.
But something changed. Recently, the garage doors have remained shut for far too long. Fans started noticing. Where was Jolene? Why weren't there any new posts featuring her? Why was her chair empty in videos? The comment sections filled with questions. Speculation ran wild. And then came the silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than any argument ever could. A relationship built on steel and sweat has finally snapped. And today, we're diving deep into the truth of her exit. This wasn't just a simple break or a professional parting of ways. What Jolene has revealed is far darker, far more painful, and far more complex than anyone expected. The shockwaves are still rippling through the custom car community. How could this happen? How did the woman who turned a backyard builder into a global YouTube sensation simply disappear? The answer is heartbreaking, and it starts long before anyone realized something was wrong. The power couple that conquered YouTube. They were the ultimate ride-or-die couple of YouTube's automotive world. Chad Hiltz brought the raw genius, the creative madness, the ability to see a masterpiece in a pile of rust. Jolene MacIntyre brought the structure, the marketing savvy, the sanity that transformed chaos into content. On screen, their chemistry seemed electric.
It's not what you have, it's what you can make.
Fueled by genuine passion for what they were creating. Together, they built incredible machines out of literal piles of junk. A 1937 Plymouth transformed into Bat Out of Hell. A 1928 Ford Model A turned into a purple masterpiece. Cars that shouldn't exist, vehicles that defied logic and physics, all born in that small Nova Scotia shop. But here's what viewers didn't see. A partnership that thrives on intensity often burns brightest before it burns out completely. Jolene has now revealed that the workload was far beyond human capacity. Think about that for a moment. They weren't just partners in life. They were co-workers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was no escape, no separation between personal and professional. Every dinner conversation turned into a debate about car parts. Every moment of downtime became another opportunity to discuss the next build, the next video, the next deadline. The line between their love and their labor didn't just blur, it vanished completely. Can you imagine that? Living with your business partner, working with your romantic partner, never getting a break from either role? The paradox of their success became the source of their deepest pain. As the Bad Chad Customs channel grew, surpassing hundreds of thousands of subscribers, then millions of views, the demands on Jolene became impossible to sustain. She was the editor, spending countless hours reviewing footage and cutting videos. She was the bookkeeper, managing finances and dealing with suppliers. She was the primary camera operator, capturing every moment of every build. She managed fan interactions while Chad focused on what he did best, creating automotive art from scrap metal. But somewhere along the way, something devastating happened. Jolene confesses that she began to feel like a ghost in her own life. The woman who built the brand, who made it possible for the world to see Chad's genius, was disappearing inside it. She wasn't Jolene anymore. She was just Bad Chad's manager, just the woman behind the camera, just another tool in the shop, expected to function perfectly without maintenance, without breaks, without her own identity. This loss of self is where the first cracks appeared, and once those cracks started forming, they spread like fractures through tempered glass. It's a common story in the world of influencer couples, isn't it? One person becomes the brand, while the other becomes the infrastructure. One gets the glory, while the other gets the grind. But for Jolene, the cost of staying was becoming too high. The price tag wasn't measured in dollars, it was measured in pieces of herself she was losing every single day. The warning signs. Everyone missed. Looking back now with the clarity that hindsight provides, the warning signs were everywhere. But when you're caught up in the excitement of watching incredible builds come to life, it's easy to miss the subtle shifts happening in the background.
Gives you more plastic. No, I know we're taping it on that side, but we'll cut it on this side and then pull the plastic over.
Ah, like right in here?
Yeah, just pull her over and run her right in there.
In the early days of Bad Chad Customs, Jolene was vibrant and present. She'd joke with Chad on camera, offer her opinions on paint colors, celebrate victories with genuine enthusiasm. Her laughter was real, her energy was infectious, and her passion for what they were building together was obvious to anyone watching. But if you go back and watch the progression of videos chronologically, you can see the transformation. It's gradual, almost imperceptible from one video to the next. But over months and years, the change is undeniable. Her on-camera time decreased steadily. At first, she was a co-host of sorts, bantering with Chad and engaging directly with viewers. Then she became more of a supporting character, chiming in occasionally, but mostly staying behind the lens. Eventually, she was barely visible at all, just a voice, off camera, or sometimes just implied presence as the person operating the equipment. Her smile, when it did appear, didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. There's a specific kind of smile that people develop when they're performing happiness rather than feeling it. It's technically correct. The lips curve upward. The teeth show. But the light is missing. That's the smile Jolene started wearing. Fans noticed, but they misinterpreted what they were seeing. Some thought she was just tired from the workload. Others assumed she was becoming more professional, letting Chad be the face while she handled the business side. A few wondered if there was trouble, but those comments were usually drowned out by the majority who still believed in the dream. What nobody realized was that Jolene was slowly drowning, and the life preserver she needed was the very thing she was helping to build. A brand that demanded everything from her, while giving less and less in return. The truth is, relationships that exist in the public eye face unique pressures that most people can't comprehend.
Some people have opinions, some people have thoughts, and they say things, or somebody says something, and they really don't take the time and think. And that's why I always say it's easier to judge because you don't have to think.
Every interaction is potentially content. Every argument risks becoming public drama. Every moment of weakness might be captured and shared with millions. The pressure to maintain the facade isn't just about ego or image. It's about protecting your livelihood, your business, your entire way of life. For Jolene, this meant swallowing her frustrations, hiding her pain, and continuing to show up even when every fiber of her being wanted to run away. Because what happens if you have a breakdown on camera? What happens if you let the audience see that the dream isn't as perfect as it appears? Would they turn away? Would the channel collapse? Would everything you've sacrificed yourself to build come crashing down? These questions haunted Jolene during those final months. The fear of destroying what they'd created kept her trapped almost as much as anything else. The creative clash that never stopped. Chad's creative process is legendary for being chaotic, instinctive, and completely unpredictable. He works on gut feeling, often changing designs at the last second. He'll wake up at 3 a.m. with a vision and immediately start cutting metal. He sees possibilities where others see only problems. For a viewer, this makes incredible content. For a manager trying to maintain any kind of schedule or budget, it's an absolute nightmare. Jolene reveals that the creative friction between them was constant and exhausting. They argued over the direction of builds, the filming style, the content strategy. Chad wanted raw, unfiltered reality, the mistakes, the setbacks, the authentic struggles. Jolene wanted a more professional brand, something polished that could attract sponsors and expand their reach. These weren't just small disagreements about paint colors or wheel choices. They were fundamental clashes about the future of their lives, their business, their entire existence. Jolene describes the atmosphere in the shop as increasingly tense over time. The joy of building, that pure excitement of creating something from nothing, was slowly being replaced by the stress of production. Deadlines loomed, expectations mounted. The pressure to deliver content, to keep fans engaged, to maintain their position in YouTube's brutal algorithm became overwhelming. But worse than the arguments was the feeling of being unheard. Think about how frustrating that must have been. Jolene was the one analyzing the data, studying the analytics, understanding what resonated with their audience. She could see what worked and what didn't. She had insights that could have taken their channel to even greater heights. But Chad followed his own internal compass, trusting his instincts over data, his vision over strategy. She confesses that she felt like she was fighting a losing battle every single day. The power dynamic in the shop was heavily skewed toward Chad. As the visionary, the creative force, the face of the brand, his word was often final in every situation. His name was literally in the title, Bad Chad Customs. Jolene began to realize that her input was becoming a formality. She was consulted, sure, but was she truly heard? Were her ideas being implemented or simply acknowledged before Chad did what he wanted anyway? She was the engine of the operation, keeping everything running smoothly, but she wasn't the captain. She wasn't steering the ship. She was just keeping it afloat while someone else decided where to go. This creative stifling led to a deep sense of professional resentment. It wasn't about ego or credit. It was about feeling valued, about having a voice, about being a true partner instead of a highly skilled employee who happened to share a bed with the boss. The imbalance in their partnership extended beyond just creative decisions. Financial decisions, business opportunities, even the direction of their personal lives. Everything seemed to orbit around what was best for Chad and the channel. Jolene's needs, her dreams, her vision for their future together became secondary considerations at best, completely ignored at worst. She found herself constantly compromising, always being the one to bend, perpetually putting her own aspirations on hold for just one more build, or just until this project is finished. But the projects never stopped coming. The deadlines never ceased. The demands never lessened. It was the beginning of the end for their collaborative dream, and neither of them saw it coming until it was too late. The performance that was killing them. YouTube is a world built on the illusion of constant happiness. Have you noticed that? The algorithm doesn't reward honesty about struggles. It rewards positivity, excitement, enthusiasm. Every thumbnail needs to pop. Every title needs to promise something amazing. Every video needs to deliver entertainment, education, inspiration. The algorithm is a hungry beast that's never satisfied. Jolene admits something that will resonate with anyone who's ever worked in content creation. They were performing even when they were hurting. They would film a smiling intro just minutes after a screaming fight. They would record cheerful banter while internally falling apart. The pressure to keep the fans happy was a crushing weight that never lifted. She reveals that the fake-it-till-you-make-it culture was genuinely toxic to their relationship. Every like felt hollow during the bad times. Every subscriber felt like they were subscribing to a lie. Every comment praising their perfect partnership was a knife twist, reminding them how far from perfect they actually were. They were trapped by the very audience they had worked so hard to build. Think about that paradox. Their success became their prison. The more popular they got, the harder it became to be authentic. The larger their platform grew, the smaller their room for honesty became.
It's my fault, but in the end it's my fault because I probably did wrong, but you shouldn't be picking at me. Don't pick at anybody. Don't bother anybody. You get picking at somebody, you know what happens? You get picking at a dog, it'll bite you.
Jolene confesses that the comment section became a source of genuine anxiety. People loved their perfect life. The dream of escaping corporate monotony to build cool cars with your soulmate in rural Nova Scotia. Fans projected their own fantasies onto Jolene and Chad's relationship, and admitting that the dream was crumbling felt like betraying everyone who believed in them. The facade started to crumble during the final few months, though most viewers didn't notice. If you go back and watch the older videos now, knowing what you know, the signs were there all along. Jolene's smiles were shorter, not quite reaching her eyes. Her voice carried a strain that wasn't there in earlier episodes. She stopped appearing in front of the lens almost entirely, retreating behind the camera where she could hide. The woman, who had been a central presence in their content, slowly faded into the background. Fans began to speculate. Was there a breakup happening? Was she dealing with a health crisis? Had something terrible occurred that they weren't talking about? Jolene reveals that the happily ever after everyone believed in was a total myth. They were two people living in a house full of cold silence. The camera was the only thing keeping them in the same room together. The projects were the only conversations they could still have without fighting. Living a double life for the internet is an emotional prison unlike any other. You can't even grieve your dying relationship privately because your relationship is the product. Your pain is unmarketable. Your truth is unwatchable. What makes this even more devastating is the complete lack of privacy in their struggle. Most couples, when they're going through difficult times, can retreat into private space to work through their issues. They can take a break from each other, seek counseling, have honest conversations away from prying eyes. But for Jolene and Chad, every interaction was potentially being recorded. Every moment together was either work or performing work. There was no safe space to be vulnerable, to admit weakness, to ask for help. Because admitting that the relationship was failing meant admitting that the brand was built on a foundation that was crumbling. The psychological toll of this constant performance cannot be overstated. Imagine putting on a costume every single day and pretending to be happy, pretending to be in love, pretending that everything is fine when internally you're screaming. Imagine smiling for the camera when you want to cry. Imagine laughing at jokes when you feel like your heart is breaking. This is what emotional labor looks like when it's weaponized by the demands of content creation. And Jolene bore the brunt of it because, as the manager, as the person behind the scenes, she felt responsible for keeping everything together. If she fell apart, wouldn't everything collapse? Jolene finally decided she couldn't live behind the mask anymore, and that decision would change everything. The breaking point nobody saw coming. Every collapse has a single moment that triggers the final fall. For some relationships, it's a massive explosion, infidelity, betrayal, a public scandal. But for Jolene, it wasn't anything dramatic at all. It was a quiet realization during a late-night editing session. Picture this. She's alone in the office area of the shop, surrounded by hard drives and footage, scrubbing through hours of content. It's 2 a.m., maybe 3 a.m. Chad is asleep. The building is silent except for the hum of computer fans. And she's watching footage of her own life, editing herself for public consumption. And in that moment, she didn't recognize the woman on the screen. She saw someone who was tired, drained, Completely alone, even when surrounded by people, she saw a ghost of who she used to be, the vibrant, passionate woman who fell in love with both Chad and the dream of building something amazing together. That was the breaking point. Not a fight, not an ultimatum. Just the devastating clarity of seeing yourself from the outside and realizing you've disappeared. The moment she chose herself over Bad Chad Customs, she realized that the business would survive without her. Chad would find another camera operator, another editor, another manager. The channel would continue, but would she survive if she stayed? Could she continue sacrificing pieces of herself until there was nothing left? The decision to leave was made in the middle of that night. She knew that walking away meant losing everything they had built together. Years of work, a successful brand, financial stability, a lifestyle that millions of people envied. All of it would be gone. But the cost of staying was her mental and emotional health, and you can't put a price on that. The actual departure was worse than fans ever imagined. This wasn't a mutual amicable decision where both parties agreed it was time to go separate ways. This wasn't a soft landing with lawyers and mediation and carefully crafted public statements. Jolene reveals that the conversation was painful and final. There was no room for negotiation, no possibility of compromise. She had made her decision, and there was no going back. She had to pack her life into boxes while the shop sat empty and silent. Can you imagine that? Walking through the space where you spent years of your life, deciding what belongs to you and what belongs to the business, separating your identity from the brand you helped create? Every item she packed carried memories. That camera had captured their first viral video. This hard drive contained footage from their happiest builds. These notebooks held ideas she'd brainstormed for future content. Each object was a reminder of what they'd built together and what she was now leaving behind. The emotional weight of that packing process was crushing. It wasn't just about gathering belongings, it was about acknowledging that a chapter of her life was ending. Every box she filled was another goodbye to the dreams she'd invested in, the future she'd imagined, the partnership she'd believed in. Chad's reaction was a mix of shock, anger, and profound confusion. He had become so accustomed to her presence, so dependent on her contributions, that he forgot her value. Or maybe he remembered it too late. The glue holding the entire operation together was suddenly and permanently gone. Jolene admits that the first night away from the shop was the scariest night of her life. She had no job lined up, she had no channel of her own, she had no clear path forward. Her entire adult life had been built around Bad Chad Customs, and now she was starting from zero. But for the first time in years, maybe the first time since the channel exploded in popularity, she could finally breathe. She could sit in silence without it being hostile. She could make decisions about her own day without considering production schedules. She could be Jolene again, not just Bad Chad's manager. That first breath of freedom, despite all the fear and uncertainty, told her she'd made the right choice. The grind that grinds you down. The custom car world is a grind that never truly stops. Let's be honest about what building a car from scratch actually entails. Thousands of hours of labor, welding, fabricating, wiring, painting, assembling. Every bolt matters. Every measurement counts. One mistake can cost you weeks of work. Now imagine filming that entire process, documenting every step, setting up cameras for the perfect angle, stopping mid-weld to capture B-roll, repeating actions because the lighting wasn't right, re-explaining something for the viewers who are just joining. Filming doubles the time and multiplies the mental strain exponentially. Jolene confesses that they were living a life of forced production. The schedule wasn't set by inspiration or creativity. It was set by the need to pay bills and stay relevant in an oversaturated market. They were on a treadmill that moved faster every single month. More content, Better quality, longer videos, more engagement. The algorithm is a hungry beast that's never satisfied. She describes the physical toll as a constant state of fatigue. Her health began to suffer from the lack of sleep, poor eating habits, and chronic stress. She wasn't just tired. She was bone-deep exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. The grind had turned their passion into a high-pressure factory.
Okay? So don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, all that sort of stuff.
Okay, what am I gonna do? Start from the half, go
Start.
1, 2, 3, go over
No,
here, 1.
no, just go right straight up. Just go right straight up.
They weren't creating art anymore. They were producing content. There's a difference, and Jolene felt it deeply. She realized that she was working toward a goal she no longer wanted, running a race she never agreed to enter. But here's where it gets even worse than we thought. The level of isolation they experienced is something most people can't comprehend. Because they lived and worked in a remote part of Nova Scotia, they didn't have a large crew or a robust support system nearby. No team of producers to share the workload. No network of friends to provide perspective. No separation between work and home. It was just the two of them against the world. And the internet. Jolene admits that she felt trapped by both the geography and the job. She had no life outside of the shop and Chad's creative vision. No hobbies that weren't related to cars. No friendships that weren't connected to the channel. No identity that existed independently. The isolation amplified every argument and every dark thought. When you're physically and emotionally isolated, small problems become enormous. Minor disagreements feel catastrophic. There's no escape valve, no outside perspective to say, "Hey, this isn't normal. This isn't healthy." She was a prisoner of the brand she had helped create. Every successful video was another bar on the cage. Every new subscriber was another lock on the door. This lack of external perspective made the situation feel hopeless. How do you leave when leaving means abandoning your entire world? How do you start over when you've invested everything into one dream? The geographical isolation also meant that Jolene had nowhere to go when things got bad. In a city, you can take a walk, visit a friend, sit in a coffee shop, and just breathe. But in rural Nova Scotia, with the shop being both home and workplace, there was literally nowhere to escape to. The walls that protected their privacy from the world also became the walls that trapped her in an unbearable situation. Breaking free required leaving her entire world behind. Not just the relationship with Chad, but the business, the community, the identity, the lifestyle, everything. And she did it anyway, because staying would have destroyed her completely. The financial reality nobody talks about. One aspect of Jolene's departure that deserves attention is the financial complexity of leaving a business partnership that's also a romantic relationship. This isn't just a breakup where you split the furniture and go your separate ways. This is untangling years of shared investment, shared income, shared assets, all while dealing with the emotional devastation of a failed relationship. Jolene had invested years of unpaid or underpaid labor into building Bad Chad Customs. How do you calculate the value of being the camera operator, editor, bookkeeper, social media manager, and business strategist? How do you put a price on the countless hours spent building a brand that bears someone else's name? The financial vulnerability that comes from being the supporting character in someone else's brand is rarely discussed in the influencer world. Jolene helped build something worth hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, in potential revenue. But because Chad was the face, because his name was on the business, because he was the one performing the builds, what was her equity in that success? These are questions that many people in Jolene's position face, and they rarely have satisfying answers. The person who does the unglamorous work behind the scenes, the editing, the management, the coordination, often has a little legal claim to the success they helped create. For Jolene, leaving meant accepting that she might walk away with far less than her contributions deserved. It meant potentially starting over financially, possibly needing to find new employment in a job market, where her most recent experience is YouTube channel manager for a business she no longer has access to. The financial fear that keeps people trapped in unhealthy situations cannot be underestimated. How many people stay in toxic relationships because they can't afford to leave?
We're in the new shop right now because Doug's working on this Underbird. I just want to get over here for a minute and apologize for yesterday, of my behavior, and anything I say right now, it's my fault.
How many continue sacrificing their well-being because the alternative is financial instability or even poverty? Jolene's decision to leave, despite these financial uncertainties, speaks to just how unbearable the situation had become. When you're willing to risk financial security for the sake of your mental health, you know things have reached a critical point. The legacy and the lesson. So what is the legacy of the Jolene and Bad Chad era? It was undeniably a time of incredible creativity. The builds were spectacular. The growth was massive. From a regional custom shop to an internationally recognized brand with millions of views, they proved that you could make it in the digital age doing what you loved, that passion and talent could translate into success. But it was also a period of profound personal loss for Jolene, a loss that viewers didn't see because it happened behind the scenes, in the quiet moments between uploads, in the spaces where cameras didn't reach. We watched the builds, marveled at the transformations, celebrated the victories. But we missed the breaking of a heart. We missed the slow erosion of a person's sense of self. We missed the warning signs because they were hidden behind editing and performance. Jolene's exit is a powerful reminder that people are more important than parts. The machines they built will eventually rust and fade away. Even the most spectacular custom car will one day end up in a junkyard or a museum. But the lessons Jolene learned about self-worth, about boundaries, about knowing when to walk away, those will stay with her forever. She opened up because she wanted the truth to be known, not to damage Chad's reputation or to gain sympathy or to start drama. She spoke up because silence protects systems that harm people. She spoke up because other people, especially women in male-dominated industries, need to know they're not alone in feeling overwhelmed, undervalued, and invisible. It's worse than we thought, worse than a simple breakup or creative differences. It was the slow suffocation of a person's identity, the gradual disappearance of Jolene the individual into Jolene the supporting character. But here's the other truth. She is stronger than we knew. Walking away from everything you've built takes immense courage. Starting over from zero when you're exhausted and heartbroken takes incredible strength. Choosing yourself when everyone expects you to sacrifice yourself takes a kind of bravery that doesn't get celebrated enough. Her journey away from the shop is her greatest build of all. Not a car, but a life. Not a restoration, but a rebuilding of self. She's welding together the broken pieces of her identity, fabricating a new future from the scrap metal of her past. What this means for the industry. Jolene's story has implications that reach far beyond one YouTube channel in Nova Scotia. Her experience shines a light on systemic issues within the content creation industry, particularly in partnerships where one person is the face and the other is the foundation. How many other Jolenes are out there right now, slowly disappearing behind successful brands? How many people are sacrificing their identity, their health, their dreams to support someone else's vision? How many are trapped by the same combination of financial dependence, emotional investment, and public expectation? The content creation industry has a tendency to celebrate the visible talent while ignoring the invisible labor that makes that talent shine. We see the person on camera, but not the person behind it. We celebrate the creator, but not the manager, the editor, the coordinator who makes creation possible. Jolene's departure should spark conversations about equity in creative partnerships, about fair compensation for behind-the-scenes work, about the importance of maintaining individual identity even within a brand, about the dangers of enmeshing personal and professional relationships so completely that there's no separation. It should also prompt reflection about what we, as viewers, reward with our attention. Do we only value the flashy, visible talent? Or can we appreciate and acknowledge the crucial contributions of people who work behind the scenes? The automotive YouTube community specifically needs to reckon with how it treats the partners and supporters of its stars. Too often, women in this space are relegated to supporting roles: the girlfriend, the wife, the assistant, without recognition of their own expertise and contributions. Jolene wasn't just Chad's helper. She was a business person, a content creator, a strategist who understood digital media in ways that many traditional car builders don't. Her skills were every bit as valuable as Chad's fabrication abilities. But because the industry tends to celebrate the mechanical skills over the business and creative skills, her value was diminished. What comes next? As we look at the empty passenger seat in the newest Bad Chad videos, we should remember the woman who made the journey possible. Jolene MacIntyre is no longer just a manager or a girlfriend or a behind-the-scenes force. She's a woman who chose her soul over a successful brand. She's a person who decided that enough was finally enough. Her story is a testament to the power of that word, enough. Enough grinding. Enough performing. Enough disappearing. Enough sacrificing. Enough. If you're watching this and feeling trapped in a dream that isn't yours anymore, listen carefully. You have the right to leave the shop and find your own road. You have the permission to prioritize your well-being over other people's expectations. You have the strength to start over, even when starting over feels impossible. Success means nothing if you lose yourself in the pursuit of it. 1 million subscribers can't replace your sense of self. Viral videos can't heal the wounds of a relationship that's destroying you. No amount of likes and comments can fill the void left by sacrificing your identity. Jolene's new chapter is just beginning. She's rebuilding her life on her own terms, away from the cameras and the pressure and the performance. She's rediscovering who she is when she's not defined by someone else's vision. The grinder is silent in Canning, Nova Scotia. But for Jolene, that silence no longer sounds like emptiness or failure. It sounds like peace. It sounds like possibility. It sounds like home. Her story reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that looks perfect from the outside but feels broken on the inside. Sometimes love isn't enough when it costs you everything you are. Sometimes success isn't success at all if you have to lose yourself to achieve it. Thank you for following Jolene's story. Thank you for understanding that behind every YouTube channel, every brand, every success story, there are real people with real struggles that don't make it into the final cut. We wish Jolene nothing but the best as she drives into her own sunset, on her own terms, finally free. And to Chad, we hope he learns from this too, that the people who support your dreams deserve to have their dreams supported in return, that the people who make you look good deserve to be seen, that the people who anchor your operation deserve appreciation before they're forced to cut the rope and drift away. The greatest builds aren't always cars. Sometimes they're lives, and Jolene MacIntyre is building the most important one of all, her own. The silence has been broken. The truth has been told. And it's far worse and far more important than we ever thought.